During her session, Pam will reveal how you can get the most out of long-form content by extending it across different channels. Take it away, Pam.
Thanks a lot, everybody. And I assume you guys will have a great lunch. And thank you for coming to my session. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the voice of God. Okay, we'll just get started. And I was here actually for the first 4 sessions. So Andrew talked about creating content for different verticals and different roles, and also for different screen sizes. And Brent talked about in terms of the challenger marketing and how the content weave into the sales enablement. And Trip touched a little bit in terms of content continuum. And I want to talk about content continuum from a slightly different perspective. And others touch a lot and a great deal about persona. And actually, I have a couple slides about persona. So thank others for covering persona, so I will not go into a detail. But it's very important to talk about persona before we talk about repurposing and refreshing and reusing content. So during my whole presentation, I will try to weave some of the key learnings from the first 4 speakers into my section, so you can somehow connect the dots. And my name is @Pam Didner. That's how I introduce myself nowadays, @Pam Didner. Eventually probably will be our social security number. And moving forward, I think the social media probably will change the business ethic. So now we do handshakes, right? You know, when, hey, Pam Didner, nice meeting you, and we handshake. Moving forward is going to be like this, and then go, that would be cool. All right, so the conference is about content to drive conversion, but before we do repurpose, reuse, and refresh, there's a couple things I want to talk about. So we'll sit back and think for a minute. Before repurposing, reuse, and refresh, like I said, I will touch a little bit in terms of the couple folks that they have spoken before me. Who is the audience? That's very important. What topics to use to engage with them, and also what materials to engage with them. Who is actually persona? And I know others was talking about is actually very controversial, and I don't know where the controversy comes from. For me, it's actually very, very important to actually have a persona identified. Once you identify who you are talking to, it's actually easy to create everything else. Does that make sense? Oh, by the way, I went on to talk about my presentation without sharing with everybody. You can access my presentation on slideshare.net/P-Didner, and I uploaded my presentation on slideshare.net. So you can access that right away if you want to see it, if you're online. And there's another venue to access that presentation. I do actually have my own website, www.pamdidner.com. You can go there and look at Speaking tab. That presentation has been uploaded as well. So feel free to enjoy my presentation. I actually spent a lot of time doing this deck with a lot of visuals to keep you guys awake. When they told me that I will be speaking during the lunchtime, what I do is I make sure my presentation is visually compelling, so that would keep you awake. And I try to use black-gray type of creative this time. I don't know how it works. If you kind of like this kind of approach in the color, let me know. And every time I create a presentation, it's totally different creative. All right, so with that being said, you can access the presentation. And another thing I forgot to do, I forgot to introduce myself. My role is Global Marketing Strategist. And what does that mean? It really doesn't mean anything. And I work at Intel. Intel is a 100,000 person company. We have marketing managers on the ground in countries, in over 50 countries, and we have over 400 marketing managers worldwide. Imagine that in the corporate world, HQ, I mean headquarters, that we are working with different marketing organizations, and we have to tell them, right? They always come to headquarters and say, hey, when is the product will be launched? What do we say about this product? What kind of content you can give to me? So with that, my job is actually creating a global go-to-market plan and identify what product will be launched when, what to say and how to say it, and create some sort of kit and create some sort of global go-to-market plan. So my regional and the geography marketing manager can use that information to plan their marketing campaigns. I know campaign is not a very nice word, but somehow they still do it. Okay, so that's my job. It's a global road, and a good chunk of that is actually content marketing and content creation. So unfortunately for today's topic, I'm not talking about how to scale contents to different countries, which is a totally different a topic can be spoken for about a whole hour by itself. But I want to explain to you in terms of what I do and how I relate it to content marketing. So persona, who, editorial, and also content. So even though I talk about repurposing, reuse, and refresh the content, content comes last. You have to identify who is the person that you should talk to, and that's very, very important. And I don't want to go through this in detail, and the authors actually talk about persona in depth, and there's a very formal process and research that you have to go through to interview your target audience to determine and create that persona. And a lot of small companies, they don't have a big budget to actually create persona, and that's fine. But you can find out who your audience preference and where they go to see the content and what they do through bias research. That can be a secondary bias research, sellers interview, go through your sales teams and interview a couple of your customers, keyword search, what are some of the keywords that they search, and I think that's actually very, very important because that will help your search, organic search ranking, and that will also help your keyword search by. And social listening, Radian 6 and Sysmas, there are some social listening tools out there that help you understand in terms of what are some of the pinpoints that your audience care about. And of course, you know, we are all marketers, our own keen observations and understanding in terms of your purchasing behaviors, and that's also a good point, a good way to actually identify a persona. Audis was talking about she created over 80 personas in the past 20-some years of her career, and she didn't create anything that's a CTO. We actually created CTO. So we have 3 different segments, which is IT managers, CTO, and IT specialist. Given that we are on the B2B marketing conference and the target audience that I focus on is IT manager. But I do agree with her in terms of the CTO. There's a difference between the sales side of things and the marketing side of things. We created CTO for sales engagement. A lot of times CTOs is high-touched, high sales engagement. Yeah. So we created that persona and educate our sales team how they can talk to the CTO. But when we do the marketing, we don't market to CTO. We market to IT manager. Does that make sense? So there is a couple things, and I think that we as a marketer, I assume a lot of you are a marketer or help the sales team, you need to understand on the sales side of things, the target audience they go after, and also marketing side of things that the end user we talk to, they probably will need a slightly different content. Okay. So we did create CTO for our sales team, but we don't market to them. And for persona, given that Intel is a global company, we actually have 3 different personas on the IT segments, like I indicated, the CTO, the IT manager, and IT specialist. On our consumer side of things, we identify 6 different personas. And DocuSign, which is a company that you can do a lot of e-signatures. Some of you probably use them. So you can digitize your signature approving process. And they have 20 personas. When we identify persona, we tend to identify the worldwide. So the IT manager identify here that apply to all the 50 countries we go after. IT manager. So you were like, well, how? Audis pretty much say it. The commonality, you have to focus on some of the key topics, key challenges that they all facing, right? And you can actually find that. It's not that hard to do. For example, the IT manager in Russia, they care about securities. They probably use a totally different network system. The IT manager in Munich, they also care about security, but all the system they use probably will be very different from the IT managers that encounters in Russia. So we don't talk about, say, what kind of network system. Maybe we should if we're in that space. But what we talk about is security. How well the Intel processors build into a certain amount of security features that will help both of them. So you focus on the common challenges. And that's one of the key points when you are looking to repurpose, refreshing, and reusing your content, is what are some of the common features and common challenges that can be scaled to different verticals. Does that make sense? So you are using one piece of content and find a different way to say it, but really still focus on features. The same features and also same user benefit. Now back to the IT manager. This is an IT manager. Again, I call it global persona. And no matter which country you go to, on the business marketing front, when we market, this is the person we market to. And he has a name, Ravi. And we also have a fairly good understanding in terms of what Ravi does. There's a technology infrastructure that we identify. Again, because it's a global persona, we have to identify the list that cover multiple regions and multiple countries. So the list can be a little bit lengthy, but that also gives us a little bit flexibility in terms of content creation. We know what their budget is. That will help our sales team. We also understand who the influencers, who are some of the influencers that talk to that specific persona. And that will help us identify the media consumption or media buys that we have to go after. That will also help us to understand who are some of the influencers and decision makers that will influence his purchasing decision. When we created a persona, we created 3 different formats. There is a pamphlet, which is one-page flyer we can pass to anybody, including all the content creators and agency. We also have a deck, which is about a 20-page deck that talk about IT managers in depth. Again, that's based on the focus group testing in 9 countries. And then we also have a video, a short video, talk about and introducing the characters or characteristic of Ravi. So if you think about it, that by itself, it's repurposing, refreshing, and reusing content. It's one persona, 3 different formats. And one thing that Adith was talking about is identifying the pain points and challenges in persona. And I think that's actually very important. A good persona provides insight for content marketing and content creation. And right here, we identify what are some of the key challenges in terms of an IT manager encounter. And by the way, those are boring topics. Who cares about virtualization? Seriously. And who cares about security? Seriously. Well, I do a little bit, but not much. But the topics are not very interesting. I have to tell you, they are not. And some of the white paper really put me to sleep. But somehow, the IT manager found it very educational. Okay, so with that, identify some of the key challenges. Remember this. This is a very important slide. Once you create your own persona, and this is probably it's not my alley, but I want to identify it's nice to give this person a name, what is their job description, what some of the challenges and desire, where they view the content, and also what kind of content format they prefer used or consume. So all that information should be in your persona. From my perspective, at least for a person who creates content, a good persona should have a couple things. First one is where they consume the content and what formats. And second thing is what are some of the key challenges they encounter. The challenge, pain point, aspiration will help me to create my editorial. And I will share with you in terms of editorial. Okay, that's assume. The content, the persona has been done, and you have an understanding in terms of what their jobs is, with keyword search, the pain point. That will drive topics. You start brainstorming in terms of what are some of the key editorial topics that you want to create your content. So before the content is created, persona, editorial topics, and editorial calendar. This is where I want to talk, again, use editorial topic to determine the content list. One thing I do want to share with you, and I have this conversation. Don't you love that visual? Thank you. I had this conversation with Megan Eisenberg in DocuSign, and they have 20 persona. And I was like, oh my God! And I was very dramatic. How do you deal with 20 persona? Do you actually have a huge marketing budget? No, we have no budget. Well, join the club. Intel is a big company. You'll probably think that we have a lot of budget. The truth is, the huge marketing budget belongs to the consumer marketing. And this little budget belongs to the business marketing. Guess which side I was at? Oh, I am. The dark side. So, with that being said, I constantly have a stakeholder sales team, and everybody come to me and say, you know what, you need to create content for CTO. You need to create content for IT specialists. We talk to them too. I understand all that, okay? There are times on the client, at least for me, to my stakeholder, I have to say no because I only have a limited amount of budget. And I want to make my budget go very, very far for a specific target audience I go after. And there are times that you have to say no. It's hard. Trust me, I usually say no with a plate of cookie. I say no first, then I feed them. Usually that works pretty well. No, I'm kidding. But I explained it to them. The reason I usually do is I told them how much budget I have, and I also said how many countries I want to cover. And with that, with this amount of budget, this is only so much I can do. Usually when I explained it with data and logic, they understand. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is be very focused. You cannot be everywhere. That's another thing. So Brent was talking about, and Artis was talking about, oh, go where your audience go. I understand. But you also have to look at your resource, your budget, and then you need to determine where it makes sense. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Will that make sense? Does that make sense to you? It's very important to understand that with your budget, you cannot go everywhere. And I don't suggest you go everywhere. If you can only focus on Twitter, just do Twitter. If you can only do on the Facebook or LinkedIn, just focus on that, nothing else. Okay? And I also have a little bit of reservation when Artis was talking about non-reply. I totally understand. And I also understand why she said we have to be there. But again, I'm a client. If I don't have resources to actually support that, then my answer is no. And it's a hard decision. And sometimes you have to make a hard decision. So you have to look at your budget, look at resources, and then determine where your money will take you the farthest. And then you focus on that channel, you focus on that kind of format. So there are times you have to say no. So I understand her point. I 100% agree. But being on the other side, that I actually have to do all the work, sometimes I can't. And my budget is not that big. Okay. The content continuum. I want to talk about content continuum from a slightly different perspective. Okay. The topics, editorial topics or challenges and aspirations that from the persona should help you determine what content that you should create. But before you determine, oh, I need to create a video, I need to create a webinar, those are not most important things. These are formats. You need to understand what you want to create. To me, that's important. Okay? And the content continuum And the odyssey is one thing I do agree. Don't do campaigns. Campaign is you start here, you finish here. The only way that you can do content marketing and think like a publishing company is you are a publisher. The way that to be the publisher is you need to actually have some of the key, very broad topics that you have in mind that you will talk about. Okay? At the same time, sell products. A lot of people say, well, you know what, we can talk about this, but you know what, I can talk about network. IT managers care about network challenges. But Intel doesn't have any product selling to that. Then that's not a topic I should talk about, period. So I talk about big data, cloud, and security. You know why? I have a products that touch on these 3 topics. They also care. At the same time, I have to sell products. And Brent was talking about one thing I also want to share with you, and I was thinking out loud when he was talking. Brent was talking about general information, accepting information, thought leadership, and commercial insight. Yeah? That sounds great. I'm on client side. I have to generate content day in and day out. I have to do tweets every single day. Do you think I'm going to have a commercial insight every day? Seriously, guys. I'm not saying he's wrong. On sales enablement side, totally agree. Right things to do. But on the marketing side, I need content that's general information, accepted, thought leadership, and commercial insight. So when you are thinking about your marketing content, you need to cover all 4 categories. But on sales side of things, I 100% agree with him. Commercial insight, solution-driven. So understand your roles and then determine your content. Because you have to create wider rate of content, your editorial topic needs to be very broad to start with. Yeah? So I have 3 broad topics we identify as a team collectively and get buy-in from our geography. 3 major topics we'll talk about: big data, cloud, and security, plus product launches. I cannot forget product launches, even though product launches in chest beating, it's still important. After all, I work for Intel, right? So that's the reality. You need to find that balance. Yes, you need to help your audience. I 100% agree. You also need to sell product. So the editorial topics yearly identify very upfront. I have 3 topics identified. That's very strategic. There's a weekly, daily, hourly, those editorial topics. Hourly tweets that you have to send out. Some of the images you have to do. Those are daily. So when I was working on this editorial topic, a lot of people got confused. Pam, we have so many different editorial topics. We have editorial calendars on the 3 topics, and then we actually have editorials for social media. So be it. That's the way to run it nowadays, unfortunately. And I cannot give you one unified editorial calendar. There's no one. I guarantee you, I tried and failed miserably. So you need to think about it, your editorial topic, highly strategic topic you want to talk to your target audience, and also daily communication or weekly communication, whatever you do for your audience. Does that make sense? So this is our yearly and monthly. We identified mobility, cloud, and big data. We also identified there's a couple product launches. This is a fantastic slide. You know why? Right here, this slide, I talked to 400 marketing managers internally. They know exactly the topics I want to develop. They also know when the product launches will be. I identify some of the key events. Intel will be at CES. Intel will be at Mobile World of Congress. There are places that we will be, and those events usually drive content creation. Okay? So weekly and daily, I don't have to tell you in detail. I'm not going to detail because you have my slides. There's a couple of the content planning tools that was interesting, so I list some of them. And they are not all of them, but content management, if you want to scale repurposing your content, you need tools. You need to think it through in terms of what kind of tool that's needed, so it will make you more efficient. So identify some of the useful link. In fact, Lee, I use your top ranked blog, and there are some of the content marketing for better planning management and free tools. And Lee Alden is speaking actually next session. And options, one thing I also want to talk about is original content and curated content. Like I said earlier, we have a hard time with our limited resources to create original content day in and day out. So from time to time, you have to curate third-party content. You need a combination of both. So there's a curation tools. I think Curata is one of them, which is our site. And we don't use them per se, but their tool is actually very interesting. So if you want to curate content, you need a tool actually to help you out. And like I said, it's very hard to create content. And I'm standing here and tell you content, and you are doing content in the trench by yourself. You know how hard it is to actually create content. So curated content may not perform as well as original content in terms of number of clicks, but from my perspective, it's actually very, very important. Okay. Oklahoma City lost yesterday, and I kind of feel bad for them. Okay. So, but anyway, so repurpose, reuse, and repackage, that's the RR. I only have about 3 minutes, and I want to talk very fast. In fact, this is probably the meaty part of the content. You can take a flagship content, do the RR. Or you can take one hero content and then repurpose that to different audiences. Or you can take different pieces of content and then create another piece of content. So I want to talk about this really fast. Right here, what we did is the 118-page white paper. And this is something you have to think from get-go. Okay? You created that piece of content. You can create 5 short blog posts, 1 short videos, 1 podcast interviewing the original author, 1 presentation possibly for SlideShare, and 1 whiteboard video. People can talk about a whiteboard, which is not a very scruffy type of video, and the 3 infographics. And you were like, okay, this is very expensive. Yes, it's not cheap. So because it's not cheap, you need to think it through. Which part, what content pieces that you really want to repurpose. Don't do it for every single one of them. You will not have budget and resources to do it. Okay? So that's one way of doing it. Then you focus on different channels. And this is basically a different formats that we did. What I want to show you, this is a great example, is by Jason Miller, Global Content Marketing Manager from LinkedIn, created a sophisticated marketer's guide to LinkedIn, and did very, very well for the first 30 days. So after that, he decided to create a podcast, SlideShare, but using exactly the same creative. That's the most important thing. There's a blogs, and the Lee talk about that. And then there's ebooks. Again, same creative. So spend once in terms of creative, then create different formats. Then infographics. Another thing they did, and physical books they created too. But this is a span of 6 to 8 months. So I want to also do a reality check with all of you, right? This doesn't create just for one time. It's over 6 to 8 months. Then take it to a global, translate it to different regions. Then they touch on the different verticals. Sophisticated CMO's guide to LinkedIn. Sophisticated healthcare marketer's guide to LinkedIn. Sophisticated event marketer's guide to LinkedIn. So one content to a different vertical and write it a little bit differently. There's another one to do it, is we did millennial studies in China, Germany, and US. There are 3 different kinds of research reports. Ebook. Okay, so you need to connect the dots. There's another way of doing it. Customer talking about their pain point, your customer testimonials. the CEO's announcement about video, maybe 2 seconds, and a couple slides about your new products. That's a new video. It's about connecting the dots. Find out a couple things that you can put that together and create new content. It is time consuming, and it's very expensive. I'm not going to lie to you. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to do it well. If you have no budget, what do? That means you have to wear multiple hats. You have no other choices. You have to program manage the content. You have to write the copies. You have to think about what's the format to write. You have to do everything. You have no budget. That's what you have to do. From time to time, I do that. And if you do that, a lot of time, I would scout to get free content, get other partners to support me. For example, this white paper is created by Juniper. They are big network companies. Guess what? I co-branded, this channel partners co-branded this piece of content. All of a sudden, they claim this is theirs. Does that make sense? It's a free content. So, Scripted.com, I was talking to a lady at my table. They also have freelancers that they use to actually can ghostwrite some content. If you really, really don't have any budget, Fivers and Tenners, you can actually go in there and check it out. Sometimes you can get a very cheap freelancers. But quality is not guaranteed. You really need to just search and find out the person that you can work with. So, when you go back to work, a couple things. Evaluate your content first. You might say, oh my God, content audit. I have so many content audit. I have so many content pieces. Start it with one audience or start it with 1 or 2 web pages. Okay? You don't have to start it from like, oh my God, I have to look at 10,000 pieces of content. No, you don't. Takes time and budget and effort to repurpose, reuse, and repackage. The prioritization is key. You need to be very focused. There's nothing to it. Then create your plan. Start it either with 1 or 2 flagship content or try to connect the different dots from a different piece of the content. Okay. That's all my presentation. I actually have one videos I want to share with you. Do I have time?
20 seconds, Pam?
Yeah. Okay, guys, ready? Have you seen it? I'm not telling you guys to do this. I'm not encouraging any extreme sports.
Or hop if you want to just bounce to my leverage. The evidence, as they say, is in the pudding. So show me the money like my name is Cuban pudding. It ain't fool's gold, it's gold, fool. Can't stop, won't stop, keeping it old school. So cool. Big Spoon is my nom.
So you were like, what the heck is this? They created this, they call it the world's longest rope jump. And like I said, I'm not encouraging you to do it. The one thing that was very clever is they actually did this and racked over 17 million views on YouTube or even higher. But they capture everything. They capture everything that happened during that day. All right? And they create additional video footage. They did behind the scenes. They did a video jumpers. There are 5 different people that jump at that day. They created 5 different videos. They also did a Q&A. So one trip, 10 different video coverage. And they spread that out over a period of time to showcase that with their audience. So that's the one thing I want to share with you in terms of how they did it. All right, thanks a lot, everyone.